This is Al Jazeera.
And live from Studio 14 here at Al Jazeera headquarters in Doha, I'm Kamal Santamaria. Welcome to the NewsGrid. A major train crash in India, at least 100 people dead, hundreds more injured, and some pretty dramatic pictures emerging from the scene of that crash. On a rail network that is the world's fourth largest, 20 million passengers every day. We'll explore the complexities of India's railway infrastructure and see what's being done to improve it. Also on the grid, a story which has somehow eluded the headlines. The UK has passed what's been described as the toughest surveillance laws in the Western world. As ever, it's in the name of national security, but we wonder how far do these powers invade our personal lives?
What do you think? Do you think government should favor national security over your personal online privacy? We have a poll running on Twitter at AJ English, and you can connect with us with the hashtag AJNewsGrid.
And the power of a good old comic. We'll tell you about Zimbabwe's latest superheroes fighting off the baddies while carrying an important social justice message. You're with the NewsGrid live on air and streaming online through Facebook Live, YouTube and at aljazeera.com. We're starting in India, where a train derailment in Uttar Pradesh has killed and injured hundreds and thrown light really on the deficiencies in Indian rail infrastructure and the extraordinary levels of overcrowding. We are going to look at all of these issues, but here are some of the pictures which came from the scene. First of all, carriages thrown off the tracks, pretty much chaos everywhere. Apparently 30 ambulances had to be dispatched to the scene initially. It happened about 3 a.m. local time near Kanpur, 450 kilometers southeast of the capital, New Delhi. And very, very quickly after the crash, we're talking minutes almost, the Indian Prime Minister was on Twitter. First, he announced the compensation of 2 lakh, which is 200,000 Indian rupees, almost $3,000, for the next of kin of those killed in the rail accident in Uttar Pradesh. And then a further announcement of 50,000 lakhs, so we're talking about $730 there for those who were seriously injured. And he goes on to say that that money is over and above any compensation provided by the railway company itself. All right, straight to New Delhi. Our correspondent on this story is Fez Jamil. Fez, bring us up to date with the latest on this, I guess the latest death and injury toll and any sign of a cause here.
Well, the death toll stood at over 100 just a few hours ago, and rescue operations were still underway. But now the railways are saying that now it's officially a recovery operation. They don't believe they'll find anyone else alive. But one of the things, as you mentioned, that this is just shows that this is another instance of a train accident happening in India. Now, somebody asked me earlier today, is this a common thing here in India? I would say it's not uncommon. This isn't an issue that has to do with this government or the last one. This is a problem that's going on for decades. Now, while the Prime Minister and the Railway Minister tweeted that there will be a full investigation, there's been investigations happening after every incident. This has been going on for decades, yet we still have this problem. So the safety records carrying these 23 million people every day is still in a very sad state.
Can you tell me, Fez, I'm sure you've either gone on train there yourself or seen the station, we always see these pictures of the overcrowding, people hanging off trains. I mean, to us outside, it might look a little odd, but I guess this is normal.
Well, I've actually been on almost every single type of train in the Indian railways, and I can tell you that they vary. Some are quite nice. They have something equivalent of a business class on certain day trains. They have a first class, which is variates, but they also have these huge overcrowded trains where people are just packed inside. One of the problems is Indian Railways, as you mentioned, is the fourth largest in the world, but in terms of size, they're one of the largest employers in the world. There's over 1.3 million. So one of the issues is maintenance inside the trains, outside the trains, on the train tracks itself, and going through every piece and making sure every piece of track is up to date and is still, in good condition is a huge logistical nightmare. Now, we still don't know the cause, but, usually they find that there was some sort of error either in the train mechanical part or something with the track. But just the sheer vastness and the number of people and logistics is one of the reasons it's so hard to kind of keep everything maintained, and one of the reasons that we keep having these stories coming up.
That is Fez Jamil joining us from New Delhi, the latest on the train derailment there. The wider issue at play here, though, is the state of India's rail network. And our interactive team has put together a very simple but I think powerful way of understanding the problem. Maybe we'll need to actually take that full frame to see it properly. But the small grey circle is the number of passengers in 1970, and then it grows out to, well, 8.4 billion journeys in 2014. So it's a massive change. But in that same period, this has been the change, only a 29% increase in the expansion of the actual amount of track. So you had 90,000 kilometres of track in 1970 and only 116,000 in 2014. It's just not keeping pace, is it? And it really needs to when you think about the scale involved. Just stand by for a moment and I'll bring this up here. Flicking through that. This is a schematic map of the entire Indian rail network, and it's one of those sort of, a picture's worth 1,000 words situation, isn't it? Look at the sheer scale of that rail network. You can see how extensive, how complicated, how mind-boggling the whole thing really is. So we're going to talk about this more with Rifat Jawaid, who is the founder of the news website jantakarreporter.com. He's joining us via Skype from New Delhi as well. This is a story that you've taken a particular interest in. How big a job is it to bring Indian railways up to standard? I mean, it must just be a constant rolling thing.
That's correct. If you look at the sheer size of Indian Railway, we are talking about, sort of 20 million people traveling in Indian Railways almost on a daily basis. But the capacity, of the passengers that the trains are carrying every day is almost 15 times more than what the trains are capable of ferrying them. So clearly, sort of this has a knock-on impact on the tracks, and there hasn't been enough, measures taken by the government to continuously, A, maintain the tracks, and B, keep adding new tracks.
We've had a question. Sorry, I just lost you for a moment there. We've had a question for one of our viewers watching on YouTube who's asking about controlling the number of people who get on the train on each journey. And I said this with our correspondent, trains are overloaded there. It's not just inside, it's outsides as well. Is that a cultural thing, or is it something which could actually be looked at?
See, I don't think, anybody who travels, by clinging onto the windows or by climbing onto the roofs, these are pretty dangerous things. People die. I mean, you look at the number of deaths. Talking about 24,000 to 27,000, deaths almost every year, and that doesn't include the major accidents that we are witnessing today. So it's nothing to do with cultural. I think it's just that, demand and supply. You have got more people wanting to travel and not enough trains, to accommodate them. Now, the irony is that instead of addressing those core issues, the governments, not just this government, but successive governments, have been focusing, they have been suffering from mismatched priority. This government in particular, talks about spending billions of dollars, on just creating 500 kilometers of stretch for bullet train when they don't even have necessary infrastructure to ensure safety for the normal train. I mean, today, one of the causes that's being talked about in media, and in fact the reporters from the ground have been saying, has taken place because of the fractured track. Now, there isn't enough mechanism, for the government to keep maintaining or ensuring that the tracks up and down the country are absolutely in good shape for the trains to travel.
Right. Rifat Jawaid is joining us from New Delhi with his thoughts on the state of the Indian rail network. We thank you for that. Got some other video for you how to look at, an example of that sort of chaos that can unfold during rush hour in India. Apparently filmed earlier this year in Mumbai. It was put on YouTube and Facebook. As this train pulls into the crowded station, people absolutely desperate to jump on. It results in this scrum, and there is a woman who is actually shoved under the train, but seems to be pulled out unharmed as well. It's quite extraordinary. Yeah, amazing to see, isn't it? That's come out of YouTube and Facebook. We've found that video of a train in Mumbai. Let's talk to Leah Harding. Hi, Leah. What are you seeing on this story online today?
Well, quite a lot online of people, of course, being very devastated for what's happened. But if you're in India and you rely on trains as a way to get around, to see family, go to school, go to work, what have you, we want to hear from you. We have our WhatsApp line open at 501-111-49 plus 974 ahead of that. And we would love to hear from you from there. And just be sure to send us a video on our WhatsApp number or on Facebook or Twitter. Kamal.
OK, thanks, Leah. More with Leah Harding later as we delve into social media and all our stories here at the live wall, though, just having a look at what's happening. Paul Brennan's up there. We're going to be speaking to him shortly, our correspondent, about the new UK surveillance laws. But first of all, it's Felicity Barr. She has got some of the day's other news.
Thanks, Kamal. And France is pushing for another diplomatic effort in Syria to stop the destruction of rebel-held eastern Aleppo. The French foreign minister has met the head of the main Syrian opposition group in QATAR on the ground. People living in rebel-controlled areas of Aleppo say they're losing faith that diplomacy will change anything. Osama bin Javaid reports now from Gaziantep. That's on Turkey's border with Syria.
The little boy is told by his big sister not to be afraid. But their faces can't hide the fear, the pain, or the dread of knowing their family is buried under the rubble. Rescuers frantically look for survivors amid the haze of dust, debris, and the usual lingering smell of explosives. The girl in the Al Firdaus neighborhood says her brothers are still there. They were in the balcony, she tells her grandfather. Hundreds of the nearly 3,000 residents of Aleppo have been killed since Tuesday, when Syrian government forces resumed intense airstrikes and artillery attacks. One sibling is rescued from the house, but it's not clear how or where he'll be treated. The World Health Organization says there are no hospitals left in eastern Aleppo because they've been bombed by airstrikes.
This department is full of injured people, not just from here, but from other areas. We have lost a lot of equipment, including ambulances. The injured can't rescue themselves.
A wounded man who appears dead blinks to show he survived the bombardment. This is what remains of the Omar bin Abdulaziz hospital, destroyed along with all other medical centers in the city under siege. Amid the fear and desperation, people in Aleppo are angry at the impunity with which the Assad and the Russian governments are attacking those who oppose them. People we've spoken to in Aleppo say that they would rather stay and die inside their homes in Aleppo than face the humiliation of leaving their ancestors' land. Civilians on all sides are at risk. Syrian state media says children were killed when a rocket hit a school in a government-controlled area of Aleppo. They say the rocket was fired by rebels, justifying the government's claim that it's fighting what it calls terrorists. Regime forces are continuing to target rescuers from the Civil Defense Force, known as the White Helmets. Their bases are also under attack. What's left of the rescue force still manages to respond following each attack. Syrians here are afraid that the ferocity of the attacks is killing so many that there will be no one left in the end. Osama bin Javaid, Al Jazeera, Gaziantep.
Well, meanwhile, Syria's foreign minister has rejected a UN plan for an autonomous region in rebel-controlled areas of Aleppo. He said it's a violation of Syria's sovereignty. Walid Mualem made the comments after meeting the UN's envoy for Syria, Staffan de Mistura, in Damascus.
We and our friends, the Russians, are in daily coordination when it comes to fights on the ground and also the political movements. In principle, let me say that the Russians condemn any violation of the national sovereignty of Syria, and Foreign Minister Lavrov said that. The Americans only want to contain ISIL and not put an end to this organization, but the administration still thinks that ISIL is a threat to the regime in Damascus, and it's a must to keep ISIL there as a threat to the regime here in Syria. The changes are coming quickly, and I think there must be a real effort to liberate Raqqa.
Prosecutors in South Korea have formally charged President Park Geun-hye's close friend on suspicion of interfering with state affairs. Choi Soon-sil is also charged with bullying companies into giving tens of millions of dollars to foundations she controlled. Two of the president's aides have also been charged with conspiring with Choi. The president herself is likely to be questioned in the coming days, but she is immune from prosecution. Now, polls have opened in France for the first round of a US-style primary. hoping to win the nomination. But it is three well-known names who will most likely win a spot in the runoff vote. They are the former Prime Ministers François Fillon and Alain Juppé, and the former President. And the German Chancellor Angela Merkel's planning to go for a fourth term in office. She's told her party, the Christian Democratic Union, of her intentions to run for next year's general election at a meeting in Berlin. She's expected to formally announce her decision in the coming hours. Merkel has governed Europe's biggest economy since 2005. That's it from me for the moment. More later. Back now to Kamal.
Thank you, Felicity. A reminder of how to get in touch with us with the hashtag AJNewsGrid. There are the contact details coming up down there. Our Facebook, of course, is facebook.com/AJNewsGrid, at AJ English on Twitter, and the WhatsApp number is +974 501 11149. The reason I'm telling you all this is because we want your comments on this next story, something that has been off the grid, but we think is important to put it on. UK intelligence agencies and police now have what are described as the most sweeping surveillance powers in the Western world, thanks to a law that passed through Parliament with barely a blip on the news radar. It is called the Investigatory Powers Act, and it's legalised a whole range of things which allow security services to keep a close eye on people's digital lives. The government faced only token resistance, really, from politicians and from the public. Now, when we say sweeping powers, this is what it means. The Act legalises hacking by security agencies into the computers and mobile phones of anyone in the UK, even those not suspected of doing anything wrong. Any company providing communications services is to collect and store data for a year. And it should be noted, this is information related to people's online activity, not the specifics. So we're talking websites, but not individual pages or articles on those websites. The legislation also fails to provide adequate protection for journalists' sources, which could discourage whistleblowing and frankly make it tougher for what we do here on the NewsGrid and generally for journalism as a whole. So let's talk to Paul Brennan, our correspondent in London, who's looking at this story for us. Hi, Paul. Why, in your opinion, and in the media there, has this sort of slipped under the radar? Where did it come from?
Well, it came out of the need to legalise activities that the intelligence services have been doing for a very long time indeed, all the way back to 2001. And frankly, there was an explicit admission that they had been operating outside of the law for rather too long. The Edward Snowden revelations of 2013 brought all this to a head. But if privacy campaigners hoped that that would mean that the intelligence services would be reined in and their activities limited, in actual fact, the response of the British government, and indeed, I suspect the Americans will follow the same way, is to simply put the activities on a more steady legal footing. That's certainly what happened this week. And to answer your question specifically, why hasn't there been more of an outcry? I think you've got to look at the context of the world that we live in at the moment, particularly here in Europe. Since the bill was put before Parliament in 2015, we've had the Paris attacks, we had the Brussels attacks in March of 2016. So during the 1 year that this bill was passing through the British Parliament, we've had what you might call homegrown terror attacks taking place, and the concern about the people carrying out these attacks somehow emerging from among the population as opposed to from some outside area has basically led people to be convinced by the arguments that the intelligence services need to, in order to find the needle in the haystack, they're going to have to sift some innocent hay to get to that needle.
Paul Brennan there, at Paul R. Brennan, if you want to connect with him on Twitter on this story or anything else he's reporting on. Thank you, Paul. Paul mentioned Edward Snowden there. No surprise, some of the most damning criticism comes from Snowden himself, the American who exposed a massive, secretive surveillance operation led by the US National Security Agency. Here is what Snowden tweeted, quote, "The UK has just legalised the most extreme surveillance in the history of Western democracy. It goes further than many autocracies." Got Larry Maggard with us now, technology journalist, CEO of ConnectSafely.org, joining us via Skype from Palo Alto, California. Do you agree with that, Larry, how the I guess, extreme side that Snowden's taken there?
It's a very broad-ranging law, as I understand it, and I think that Snowden is correct in being concerned. It's sort of ironic that he's speaking from Russia, where they have also very, very strong surveillance privileges against their own citizens. But that aside, when it comes to democratic powers like the United Kingdom, it's rather severe. but I'm afraid it might be a harbinger of things to come throughout the Western world, including my own country.
Okay. The government here, they would say national security. Simple as that. In fact, I don't know if you heard our correspondent talking before, but it reminded me of the 9/11 Patriot Act situation where they were able to say, look,
Yes.
Look what happened. It could happen again. We got to do this.
Right, and not only did they make that justification, but I suspect that justification is well received among the population when you think that the British people just voted for Brexit, and when you think the American people just voted for Donald Trump, and there are more, I don't want to say, well, more authoritarian political candidates emerging throughout Europe, that I think we are entering an age where surveillance is going to be more accepted among the public. But there will remain people like Edward Snowden, like journalists, like civil rights activists, like the legal community that are going to be very concerned about this, because the danger is that, first of all, in both Britain and most countries, including the United States, we have laws that we have historically had laws that protected the privacy of citizens. Some of these could go by the wayside in the fight against terrorism. I should also point out that this raises some security issues that while the bill itself is designed to provide a more secure environment against physical terrorism, it could create a less secure cyber environment, because if you take away people's privacy, then there's also the risk that their data could be intercepted, not just by government, but by bad actors, including criminals. So there are some security implications in any of these bills that also jeopardize privacy.
All right. Larry Maggard, thank you so much for your thoughts there. Do appreciate that perspective. A few comments coming through from Facebook and Twitter whilst we were talking there. Tom Alvarez has said, if I have to give up freedom to feel safe, then what's the point? Fair point. Richard Freeman says, absolutely not. National security should not outweigh privacy. And on Twitter, John has said, it depends on which country you're in and who's running it at the time. And maybe that's a fair thought as well, because it is, of course, different for every country which would take on these laws. Leah Harding. Perfect story for you here. We call this Connect. This is all about connecting. What have you seen?
Well, there's been quite a pitiful response to this online. A lot of it is because it's kind of been swept under the rug, if you will, by a lot of major political moves lately, Donald Trump being one of them, overflowing this conversation. So we thought we'd start our own conversation online. We have a poll up on Twitter at AJ English. This is what we wanted to know from you. Is the UK close to making, the UK is close to making government hacking legal. So should national security concerns outweigh online privacy? 61% of you said no, but 34% said yes. Claire, here in Uganda, she was kind of on the fence about this one. She said yes, but they should agree to confidentiality and use the information for only national security. So we have a few people on the fence there, like Claire. If you haven't taken this poll yet, you totally should. I'd love to chat with you on here and get a feel for what you're thinking. Are you part of the 61% who doesn't think this is a good thing? This conversation, a hashtag IP bill, investigatory powers bill, and the Snoopers Charter, which is also what this is called, haven't been trending online since March and June of this year. Something interesting, when it was trending was when Theresa May did the second reading of it in Parliament, and Christian here, this is from March, said that the IP bill is trending because every home in the UK may soon be victim of a home invasion. You won't see them, but they will see you, always. So that's the type of conversation we're hearing. But again, this is not something that is trending online, but is slowly picking up a little bit of traffic as this starts to become a law. Something to point out, this bill is not yet a law. As The Independent here says, the Snoopers Charter passed into law this week. Say goodbye to your privacy. The Queen still needs to rubber stamp it, if you will. That hasn't been denied since 1707. But something I think that's interesting here in The Independent's second line is the fact that you're on this website is potentially state knowledge. And then, of course, some pretty funny cartoons surfacing around this conversation. This one saying, in a dangerous world, the only way we can protect our civil liberties is by sacrificing them. If you would like to join in on this conversation, we'd love to hear from you. Take the poll, or you can write me directly on Twitter at Leah Harding AJE. Kamal?
Thank you, Leah. We'll talk to you again soon. We're going to look at APEC now. Asia-Pacific leaders have free trade on their minds as they wrap up the APEC summit in Peru, overshadowed, you might say, by the US President-elect Donald Trump and his protectionism. The man he's replacing, Barack Obama, this is his last big trip overseas in the job. He's been trying to reassure other leaders about what lies ahead once Trump takes over. Big concern is that he'll put the final nail in the coffin of that unpopular TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. Mariana Sanchez is our correspondent at APEC. Hi, Mariana. It is peculiar, isn't it, when a man who's not even there is taking centre stage?
That's right, Kamal. He has really been the center stage here without being here, as you say. And there, of course, are a lot of concerns among the 21 members of this APEC summit about what will happen with the next U.S. administration. And there's been reactions from a series of leaders in different ways. For instance, Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto who is very, very concerned about what will happen with Mexico, as Mexico's most important partner, trade partner, is the United States. He has said that he would favor a dialogue for a new bilateral relationship with the United States. However, President Enrique Peña Nieto also still favors an advance of the TPP, and with him, countries like Australia, Japan, Singapore, and New Zealand want to continue with the TPP regardless of what the new U.S. administration does. Now, the New Zealand Prime Minister, John Key, said it is a tremendous despair, quote unquote. He said Trump's views can't be allowed to slow down the economic integration by the rest of the world. Now, perhaps the most forceful defense of free trade was that of Chinese President Xi Jinping. He said that APEC's 21 members should negotiate to integrate all of the members of the Pacific Rim. And at the end, President Obama, trying, I guess, to cool down the waters, said, well, don't assume the worst. Wait until the new administration is in place.
Mariana, if the TPP falls over, what are the other trade options around? How might it sort of play out after that?
Well, what everyone here is saying is that the great winner, if you will, of this summit will be China. Everyone is thinking that perhaps China will become the new trade leader around the world, and the countries are looking at China to not only become part of trade deals. Remember that China was not a member of the TPP. For instance, Australia wants China not only to become part, but to lead new trade agreements around the world, and to include countries like India and exclude the United States. Now, the Peruvian president, a champion of free trade, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, has taken bold steps already by he's going to hold bilateral meetings with President Xi Jinping, who will be staying here after the summit. Remember, Peru's most important economic partner is China. However, Peru wants to be part of the regional comprehensive economic partnership, this free trade agreement that is led by China.
Mariana Sanchez reporting from the APEC summit in Lima. Thank you for that. Mariana doing a great job for us there. But, you know, covering big summits like this does take a lot of work, a lot of planning behind the scenes as well. On Saturday, our other reporter in Lima, Scott Heidler, recorded this show and tell, explaining the ins and outs of APEC and the place that attracts all the journalists.
So this is the Peruvian Ministry of Culture complex, and this is where all the APEC events are going to be held over the next couple of days. This main building here, this is where the press area is. And then just next door, around over here, it's a pretty big complex, is the National Theater. That's where the CEO Summit's taking place. That's where Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg spoke. But what's also very interesting, because everything is in this complex and you have all these world leaders coming here, at least for 2 blocks around the entire area, there's even an entourage coming in now, it's completely locked down for security. So it's very difficult to get in here. And here, just on the edge here, you can see this is where a lot of the media are doing their live reports. As you can see, security even coming into the venue is still very strict as well. And this is mainly where the media comes to. There are several floors upstairs, and there are several different offices where people have their transmissions from and things like that. But there's more in here as well. There's over here, you can see where this big board is. This is where the video comes in of when the dignitaries arrive. They were having a shot up there just a little bit ago of Putin arriving at the airport in his plane. And then even further back than that, there's actually a social media lounge where people were playing video games earlier. And then there are also these like mini studio setups for the local channel, the APEC, and also for regional channels too. They'll have interview segments here. As you can see, just behind the main press building, Facebook has their own little house, if you will. A lot of people are out here waiting for Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, because he spoke earlier today and he's going to come back over here probably in the next couple of minutes. Now, this is the area right behind that building where we just came through with the security, where the international media is. And it's going to be interesting over in the next couple of hours because they've got this little section over here. It's kind of a Peruvian cultural section. There's some very good coffee. And then they've been having some events and some music here pretty much every day. But the most important thing, at least for us, since we're working very long hours with all these live reports and things, and that's right there where the coffee comes out.
Fantastic from Scott Hyder there. As ever, AlJazeera.com has you covered. If the whole concept of the TPP leaves you a bit confused, search for the TPP controversy explained and you'll find this simple sort of pros and cons explainer which shows you what the different sides of the arguments think. So that's pretty cool. TPP explained at AlJazeera.com. Wherever you're watching the NewsGrid around the world, thank you for joining us. In fact, I'm reliably told that we've got people from Uruguay, Sweden and Cyprus all over the world watching us on Facebook.com/AJ Newsgrid. Your thoughts welcome on anything we're talking about. Hashtag AJ Newsgrid, at AJ English on Twitter. The WhatsApp number is +974 501 11149. He says, trying to remember it. Right, still ahead on the grid. It's been on and off for more than a year, but now Haitians are finally getting the chance to vote in elections. Is there any hope left, though, after years of corruption and crippling natural disasters?
Weather updates brought to you by QATAR Airways. Going places together.
Hello, we may well see more rain coming into South Africa over the next couple of days. Nothing like the flooding rains that we saw just over a week ago, but some heavy downpours nevertheless. You can see how the cloud is sliding its way down towards that eastern side of the country. Lesotho could see some rain as we go on through Monday. Much of South Africa at this stage does look largely dry, but come Tuesday, some very heavy rain setting in. Western Cape, seeing some wet weather. That wet weather also stretching across the Drakensberg peaks. So some lively showers coming in at that stage. Showers too into northern parts of Mozambique, sliding across the Democratic Republic of Congo. And notice some wet weather there, just easing across into Angola, joining up with the seasonal rains that we have across central parts of Africa. So some cloud and rain here just around the Rift Valley, pushing towards the Gulf of Guinea. More big downpours coming in as we go on through Monday and indeed Tuesday. Southern parts of Nigeria seeing chances of some showers, drier weather as we go on into the middle part of the week, one would suggest. Not too bad at the moment across northern parts of Africa. We've got some rain just pushing across the far north of Morocco. That will become more expansive. Rain too west of Egypt, and notice from Morocco by the time we come to Tuesday, heavy downpours coming in with a likelihood of flooding.
Weather updates brought to you by QATAR Airways. Going places together. On Counting the Cost, a look at South Korea's powerful chaebols. They're the family dynasties that rule the economy. Plus, a Middle East startup that wants to rival Amazon. And why aviation in Iran still needs an upgrade. Counting the Cost at this time on Al Jazeera.
New Yorkers are very receptive to Al Jazeera because it is such an international city. They're very interested in that global perspective that Al Jazeera provides.
This episode gets personal.
The number of people with food allergies has skyrocketed in the last few decades.
100 years ago, people did have food allergies, but it wasn't to the same epidemic proportions that we're suffering from now.
It's like navigating a minefield at all times.
First time we were exposed to it, we had no idea how dangerous.
Yeah, but I had to sit at my own table with all the kids with food allergies. I couldn't sit with my friends.
Boom, you have 5 minutes. What are you gonna do about it?
Take note at this time on Al Jazeera.
The headlines at AlJazeera.com and what's trending as well. Interesting, I've seen that Gaza story at the top of the trending list for most of Sunday as well. In Gaza, we aren't mourning Hillary Clinton's loss. The latest there on the train derailment in India as well, and Malaysia, the rising public anger that we saw on yesterday's NewsGrid against Prime Minister Najib Razak. All the stories you're looking at AlJazeera.com. A history of dictatorship, years of corruption, and more recently natural disasters that have left the country on the brink of collapse. Some of the hardships that continue to bring stability and jobs. There are 27 presidential candidates to pick from, the winner expected to take over from interim President Jocelyn Prévert. So how did Haiti go from being the richest colony in the New World under French rule centuries ago to the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere today? Well, we've got to go right back in time here after the Revolution for Independence in 1801, when Haiti had to pay a large indemnity to its former French rulers. And then in 1915, the United States invaded, occupied for 3 decades and controlled Haiti's finances. So that's a pretty tough start. Then came a series of corrupt regimes, beginning with Papa Doc Duvalier in 1956, his son Baby Doc as well, who both declared themselves presidents for life. In 1990, Jean-Bertrand Aristide became president after the first free and peaceful elections, but he was later ousted in a coup before being reinstated with US help, only to be thrown out again. So political turmoil just been a part of life in Haiti. And then, of course, you add in the earthquake of 2010, absolutely devastating. It brought untold destruction, followed by that cholera outbreak as well. So really, Haiti just doesn't get a break right through history. Live to Port-au-Prince now in the Haitian capital, Teresa Beau, our correspondent, with the latest on polling day. Teresa.
Well, here we are at the market, Canapé Vert. This place has been turned into a polling station. Since very early in the morning, people have been coming here to cast their vote. This election has been long overdue. This process started last year, in October last year, when the elections results were cancelled because of accusations of fraud, of voter intimidation and other things. Since February this year, this country has had an interim president whose mandate expired last January, and that's why these elections are crucial. Joining me now is Ilio Durandis. He's a political analyst, a blogger. So how important are these elections, and how, whether this time, why are we going to see free and fair elections in Haiti?
The hope is we want to have free and fair elections in Haiti. And the first part of the question is how important it is. This is probably the most crucial election in my lifetime, because as you look at the country, it's a lot of things need to be done. With an interim government, those things cannot be done. So the elections have been postponed for like over a year. The Haitian people want to have their own government so we can move forward in this country.
Do you think the candidates this time, they're going to accept the results of whatever happens?
There's always a possibility one candidate may not want to accept the results. But so far, if everything stays the way they are today, I think there's going to be a minimal reason for people not to accept it. So I'm hoping that the leading candidates will accept the results.
Haiti is facing right now a very serious humanitarian situation, especially in the southern part of the country. We're seeing houses have been destroyed, crops have been destroyed, people are facing food shortages, but the United Nations is finding it hard to raise the money they need in order to help people. What do you think is happening?
There's a lack of trust for the Haitian government, so they're probably not going too hard to raise money to help the country because we have instability right now. There's not a legitimate government in place. So I think, again, that's one of the reasons why these elections are so important. After the elections, it's probably going to be easier because they will know they have the partner in Haiti that's going to be for 5 years that they can work to resolve those problems for those people who got hurt during Hurricane Matthew.
Thank you very much. So this is how important these elections are here today. Probably results are going to take several days in order to start coming in, and it's very likely there's going to be a second round that should take place in January.
Teresa Beau in Port-au-Prince, who will be doing a Facebook Live a little later on the Al Jazeera English Facebook page, so keep a lookout for that, at Teresa Beau on Twitter as well. Leah Harding, connecting. I mean, Teresa's been managing to tweet today, which has been great, but I know infrastructure, 4G, 3G, whatever you want to call it, it's not great there, is it? So
it's not great, no. I was there a few years ago covering the aftermath of the earthquake. I was essentially on an internet fast, if you will. Couldn't connect to the internet, and here's why. Google put together this cool chart for us. Bring it up here for you. This shows you the bandwidth or the internet connectivity across the Caribbean. You have Puerto Rico here, 73% of the population there has a solid internet bandwidth. Dominican Republic, a neighbor to Haiti here, just that's that little red graph there at the bottom. Haiti's basically not on the map for internet, essentially, is what this Google chart is saying. It's terrible there. It's really hard to connect online. And you see a lot of that visually going on with hashtags as well. So today is the day that Haiti's choosing their next president, and this is the conversation map that's going on. This is called a trends map. Usually on a day of an election, this entire region, for most countries, would just be littered with these hashtags. You wouldn't even be able to read the hashtags very well because there would be so many. In Haiti today, you can easily read the main one, Haiti, vote, but then you have Donald Trump making an appearance down here in Western Haiti. So a very, very wish-washy conversation, if you will, going on online, but Teresa Bo-Stringer, a person who's working with her as a producer on that story, has been tweeting as well, Etienne Dupont, and he was saying over 15,000 people were expected here, but the turnout has been pretty low so far. There was some concern that the aftermath of Hurricane Matthew would have a role in this, and it seems that it has. There are also 27 presidential candidates. He again's tweeting here, take your time, girl. Here, this woman is trying to vote, sift through pages here of presidential faces, trying to pick which candidate she even wants to vote for. So it's a very, very difficult conversation, both on the ground, trying to get people to vote, but also online, people talking about this. And a lot of it is because of the internet. If you're in Haiti and you are able to tweet to us, tweet at me. I would love to hear from you at Leah Harding AJE, or for the broader conversation, you can join in with the hashtag AJNewsGrid. Kamal.
Thank you, Leah. Back at the live wall over here, checking out what's happening. Some lovely pictures coming in here, which I've just been watching from Iraq, from Karbala, Shia festival that's going on there after Ashura. So there's some lovely images coming through from there of people out celebrating in Karbala. We'll just knock that one back. Also notice that Stefan de Mistura, who is the UN Special Envoy to Syria, due to be speaking in a couple of minutes' time, I think. So we'll keep an eye on that and see if he does say anything new on the situation in Syria. Right now, though, Felicity Barr, back to you with more of the day's news.
Thanks, Kamal. And a Saudi general has accused Houthi rebels in Yemen of launching a ballistic missile in violation of a 48-hour ceasefire. The missile was fired into the eastern desert province of Marib. The truce is holding up in many parts of Yemen, but the Saudi-led coalition and Houthis have blamed each other for fighting in the city of Taiz. Thousands of civilians are trapped there and many are injured. Well, Brigadier General Ahmed Assari is the spokesman for the Saudi-led military coalition, and he denies reports of Saudi airstrikes in the city of Sana'a, despite a truce.
We are conducting response to violation. We told them if they move in the ground, if they try to gain position, if they move their troops, there will be a response. This is what we are doing. Believe me, if they stop moving, if they respect the ceasefire, there will not be any movement. But we have people in the ground we have to protect. We have the Yemeni National Army, we have the population in the area. Those people want to punish people, as was what happened today and yesterday in Taiz. They keep firing indiscriminately to civilian position. We cannot do this. It's a responsibility that we have to take out and to protect the civilian and the troops on the ground.
Now, the UN says 60,000 people have fled their homes in northern Iraq because of heavy fighting. Half of them are children. Many tell stories of horror and hardship. Others are just too traumatized to even speak, as Mohammed Jamjoom now reports from the Zelakan camp east of Mosul.
These days, the smiles don't come often. And when they do, they barely mask the pain. Even in this child-friendly space, 14-year-old Ashjan feels far from safe. Rather than speak, she draws. For a girl who lost both parents and 3 of her siblings in the fight against ISIL, it's a way to express her psychological ones. Says Ashjan has never been the same since the airstrike that destroyed their.
The missiles are coming.
Workers with the aid organization World Vision say Ashjan, whose leg was badly injured in that strike, is like many other children here. They have all suffered so much, their sense of belonging is lost.
I'm sure that the impact of this war and the impact of what they say, it will keep them with a normal life again.
At the Zelican camp for the internally displaced, the adults are putting in as much effort to make these children feel protected as the children are in maintaining their resilience. Here, art and football are forms of much-needed therapy.
For a few hours a day, they get to be kids again, to have a little bit of enjoyment. But compared to all the trauma they've suffered, this is just a tiny bit of relief.
Ashjan's cousin, Amira, tells us life in a camp for the displaced, no matter how difficult or tenuous things may feel, is far better than life was under the rule of ISIL in their village of Abu Jarhour.
They wouldn't allow girls to go outside. The older girls weren't allowed to go outside, and the boys were taught other things. They taught them about bullets and how to shoot.
Even in this landscape full of deprivation and despair, the children still somehow manage to see light where most see dark. And one girl, whose wounds are far from healed, refuses to succumb. Mohammed Jamjoum, Al Jazeera, at the Zelican camp for the internally displaced, east of Mosul.
Rival Cypriot leaders have resumed peace deal talks on ending the island's 42 years of division. The Greek Cypriot President Nikos Anastasiades and his Turkish Cypriot counterpart Mustafa Akinci met in Switzerland for the second time this month to discuss potential territorial readjustments. Analysts say the meeting could be the last chance to reunify Cyprus, whose division remains one of the world's longest-running political disputes. And that's it from us here in London. Back now to Kamal.
And Felicity's got a full bulletin of news right after the NewsGrid, about 13 minutes, so do stick around for that. Now, not many news networks have a permanent presence in Nepal, but we do. It's been a country we've always tried to put on the news agenda. Think about the change there, a civil war which transformed the Himalayan country from a Hindu kingdom into the republic we know today. But it came at an enormous cost, you know. More than 16,000 people were killed, hundreds of thousands more were forced from their homes. And 10 years after the peace accord was signed, survivors are still waiting for justice. Ramyata Limbu reports now from Kapilvastu.
Himkala Bhandari's world shattered when her husband Roshan Bhandari was killed by security forces 14 years ago. Himkala is left with memories of the Maoist party worker and the responsibility of raising their two young daughters. The Maoists launched an armed conflict against the Nepali state, pressing for social and political change.
Political leaders should look into the truth and reparations and provide justice to victims. I know this won't bring my husband back, but any long-term support would make life easier.
The husband of Himkala's neighbour was also killed at the same time. Megh Bahadur Kesi was killed by Maoist militia just outside their home. They accused him of being an informer for the security forces.
What will make me forget? How can I find peace? What can the state do? What can the Maoists do? They have to help me find peace.
The Comprehensive Peace Agreement ended the 10-year-long war in November 2006. The deal highlighted the importance for justice and accountability for Nepalis affected by the conflict. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission has received more than 50,000 complaints since it was constituted 19 months ago. More than 4,000 of them are from the district of Kapilvastu, home to Himkala and Nima. The women belong to the Conflict Victims Common Platform, which campaigns to secure justice for victims of the Nepalese conflict. The head of the International Center for Transitional Justice Office in Nepal says progress is slow.
Unfortunately, now 10 years after the signing the peace agreement, it is still stagnating. I think it took a long time to have a law on a TRC Act, an act creating a Truth and Reconciliation Commission and a commission to investigate enforcer disappeared. But the issue is that here the discussion is still focusing on prosecutions, and we are kind of ignoring other pillars of transitional justice like truth-seeking, reparations, institutional reforms, and this is what making things going very slow.
Human rights activists say unless there is a concerted effort by the government, political parties and civil society to find common ground, thousands of conflict victims will continue to wait for justice. Ramyata Limbu, Al Jazeera, in Kapilvastu, Nepal.
And our online teams put together some fantastic material on Nepal, all encased in this one interactive piece, Nepal, the Maoist Dream. You can read it online, you can download an ebook, you can listen to an audiobook, any way you want. More great work from the team at interactive.aljazeera.com. If you want to get in touch with us, you know the ways, but I'm going to still remind you. Hashtag is AJ NewsGrid. You should see them on the screen in just a moment. Also, at AJ English is our Twitter handle. Facebook.com/AJ NewsGrid if you want to watch the show and contribute as well. And the WhatsApp number is +974 501 111 49. Lovely tweet I've gotten in from Xito in Uganda. Apologies if I've said your name wrong, but who said, I can't afford to miss AJ NewsGrid. Very interactive, and my prayer is they give the program more time. We're just on air only a week, but I'll see what you can do. I'll talk to the boss about it anyway. A weather check. Actually, we're going to check the poll. Let's have a look at the poll first of all. Leah told you about this a little earlier. And, we're just not updating in that shot, unfortunately. Can't actually see. But if you want to go to @AJ English on Twitter and vote in that poll about the UK's government hacking law, we will update you on that online. That's cool. Contribute to that if you want to. Checking the weather next, then a story we've been promising to bring you since the start of the show.
She tackles, Somali pirates, corrupt ministers. She fights warlords.
Zimbabwe's unconventional comic book heroes are on a different kind of mission. And now, here it comes, a bit of wild weather from around the world sent in by you at home.
In every corner of the planet, an adventure is about to unfold. For every tale recorded, countless fleeting moments go untold. From around the globe, unique award-winning documentaries to open your eyes. Witness at this time on Al Jazeera.
Scientists have long been intrigued by the sort of empathic benefits of MDMA, but now for the first time, there's an FDA-backed study.
Fresh perspectives, new possibilities, groundbreaking documentaries, stories of triumphs and tribulations. Al Jazeera continues to push the boundaries of traditional television.
I was never a huge fan of comic books, but we know that comic book artists around the world love to draw their superheroes trying to save the world. It's a simple formula. In Zimbabwe, though, they've found more realistic goals for their characters. Our social media team takes a look now at how the problems of Zimbabwe are reflected in the comic books.
The villains that we encounter in Africa are very different from the villains that you find in the Western world. We don't have notorious bank robbers or kingpins and that kind of thing. Our villains are of a different nature altogether.
There's a time where we literally wish there was a superhero out there that can actually rescue us from some of the things that we face in life. And having that character can sort of boost someone's confidence, saying, if that can happen, maybe I can still be my own personal hero in life and manage to do something for someone or for myself.
Comics with a social conscience. Very nice. Now we're going to tell you about the poll. We're just going to check the results as they are. The UK, its new hacking law, if you like. 61% of you have said no, national security concerns should not outweigh online privacy. I'm not terribly surprised at that level. That's about 1,500 votes and 10 hours left on that. So plenty of time if you want to join the conversation on that. And you can leave comments as well down the bottom there. We keep an eye on those. Hashtag AJ NewsGrid on that one. That'll almost do it for this news grid, but we do want you to keep in touch with us on social media. We've been reminding you of the ways to do it, but we're going to remind you again here. The hashtag is AJ NewsGrid. Use that on any social platform you are using. On Twitter, at AJ English is where you can see the poll, reply to it, and check out all the other things which our online team is posting from television and online at aljazeera.com. Facebook.com/AJ NewsGrid. So many things you can do there. You can either watch the show online, you can contribute. We pop videos up during the day as well, letting you know what's going to be on the show. And you can connect with our Facebook bot, AJ, who will communicate back and forth with you. A few little questions here and there. Polls there as well, the easiest way for us to contact you there. And the WhatsApp number is +974 501 11149. Not just for your comments, but if you're on the scene of a big moving story, send us video, send us pictures, send us audio. You can help us tell all of the stories that we tell here on the News Grid. We will see you back here, Studio 14 at Al Jazeera, 1500 GMT on Monday for AJ News Grid.